To my right is a fine gentleman who lives in London, so it wasn't way too far for him to be here. And yeah, I could go on now and do a really, really long introduction about his music and art and about idiosyncrasy. You say idiosyncrasy in music, and yeah. But his name is James Holden. He runs a label called Border Community and makes very nice electronic music that makes you want to dance. So please give him a warm welcome.
Hi.
So James, what were your first musical memories in your childhood?
I don't remember. It's not a memory then. My dad played the piano, I guess, so that was... We didn't really have very much music in the house. He's weird. He just plays the piano but doesn't have a very good stereo. So it was just that, him playing classical music. Until I was even quite old before I got a radio or a tape machine, and then like a teenager before I had my first tape player.
And he had the sheets of all the Kraftwerk stuff. That's why you got into electronic music later on.
I don't know if it would be very good on the piano. It was an accident. I had an 8-bit computer, and I was a nerd, so I was programming it, and then making music with it seemed quite interesting. So I was playing 3 sounds at once, sine waves, and then you had noise as well. And I didn't know any electronic music at all. I sort of thought it was for idiots because of Radio 1's dance music coverage. And then a teacher, a physics teacher at school, gave me Orbital and stuff like that, 90s drum and bass, that sort of thing. And suddenly I ditched all my rock CDs and moved on.
And yeah, from that, you put out a record at a quite early stage, right? You were pretty young when you put out your first records.
Yeah, I was, I think, 19 when the first one happened. And it wasn't really something that I'd taken very seriously. It was like I'd made a dance record because my mate had a techno night and wanted to do a CD, but actually he was never going to organise something like that. And then someone played it to a record label. Sort of, I hadn't even sent the demo out, and then it just sort of happened. It wasn't really, I hadn't sort of planned, this is what I'm going to do. Really, the music I was making was completely another thing. And then just this thing happened, so I just went along with it, naively.
So you made it specifically for your mate's night, but it...
Yeah, and then, I mean, I was sort of interested in, at the start, I was making all kinds of things, sort of techno and electronica, and trying to make drum and bass and everything as well. And I didn't really see that 4/4 music was going to be where I went with my life at all. It wasn't like planned, it just... But then you're sort of quite quickly sucked into a little tunnel.
You were at university already back then?
Yeah, it was just a friend at university who heard it and played it to the label as well. Like.
And from there on, I mean, could you talk like they dubbed you the wunderkind of trance or prog or whatever, right?
Yeah, which was really embarrassing, I think. Sort of because obviously the record label want to make money, so they're pushing this thing, and I guess it's a lesson. The first lesson was that once you've done something, it's really quite hard to get away from it. Like you have to sort of step back and disappoint the people who think you're just going to carry on doing that forever. But maybe doing that early sort of stood me in good stead. Like I don't feel uncomfortable doing that again now or again in 2 years' time or something as well. So.
And do you have some advices when it comes to signing to a record label for these wonderful young people here?
I mean, it was almost completely stopped the interesting bit of my career from happening because I'd signed my name exclusively in a terrible contract to a record label which wasn't very good at putting out records. And yeah, never sign a contract in a pub, never sign a contract without seeing a lawyer. It seems really obvious. And I'd already heard people tell me that sort of thing before. I'd read about it and whatever. But in the moment, you're really you want this to happen. You believe this person that says, "Oh, nobody sees a lawyer," and you just go along with it. And then suddenly you're stuck, and you're having to spend all your savings on a lawyer to escape from this situation. It's like, yeah, I mean, I can't say it enough. But yeah, it's no effort. Lawyers aren't scary. Phone them up. It's like 200 quid, and they'll look at a contract for you, and it can save you. I don't know how much, like a lot of heartache and stress afterwards.
But back then, like the feeling of, oh wow, I'm gonna release a record prevailed over.
Yeah, definitely. Because you fixate on it when you're making demos and no one's really hearing your music. But looking back, actually that's the best time of making music, when you're just playing things to your mates. You're so free and relaxed, and what you make is good in that moment, and then it's gone. And that's, in a way, I'm sort of jealous of going back. I mean, the big goal of releasing a record is actually a bit of an anticlimax, I always felt at the time. And really, if you make a difference with a record, that's so much more important than just putting some vinyl out that sells a few hundred. It's over a week later.
What do you mean with making a difference with a record?
Just a record that people pay some attention to, and the only way to get that is to make that record, I think, is not to really care about having a release, or not to be trying to have that thing happen.
So you've made a record like that?
I don't know.
But you had some, because I don't know if most people here are familiar with your music or not, so maybe there have been a few things that kind of turned into big hits.
Yeah.
Or touched a lot of people, so maybe we can listen to one of those things.
I think I definitely don't have the first one. I'll just check. Oh, come on, Windows. Oh, yeah. So this is actually the first one, which was when I was 19 or 20 or something, so it's really embarrassing for me to listen to it. And we'll just play a minute or two, if that's all right.
Might be fun for everyone.
Yeah, please don't laugh. Or point. This is the thing that made me realize I needed to buy bass traps for my studio, actually. You can hear it's a real mess in the low end, but
I didn't notice.
It's just a bit not quite right, but never mind, it's done.
So this is something you pay a lot of attention to? Like the way you mix your music down and...
Actually, no. I became really sort of blasé about it, like really just thought, really what happens in that moment, if it sounds good, then all this serious studio stuff of little fine notch EQs to make it sound really clean and perfect compression and a balanced mix, I just thought it's not really as important as the feeling and the atmosphere in the music. And I mean, I produced a track, wrote a track, co-wrote a track that was on Sasha's album when I was a long time ago, and that was like, because it was mixed down in a big studio by a professional person, it was mixed down in a completely different way to how I would have done it, and I just sort of thought it sounded really cold and a bit fake and didn't really sound real anymore, and that makes it feel a bit cynical as well, and it just sort of takes away all the magic of the music, sort of polishing it away too much. Like the bad mix is actually as important a creative decision as which bass drum you use or the melody of the synth line. It places it as a meaning, a sort of what this music is. Like its identity is coming from a bad production, and now I'm sort of deliberately trying to do bad production in some ways.
And you think the professional person that mixes down your stuff, it's because they are not really attached to it? It's just...
Well, they're following the rules, how to make a good sounding piece of music. I guess you've all heard like a lot of people telling you what you can and can't do in a mix down. You know, I've read so much rubbish on the internet of people's opinions of how to mix music and what's correct.
For instance?
Just, I mean, I don't know, just things about, you know, the right frequency balance or how compressors should be used, or never put a compressor on the master when you're working, or things like, I mean, for years, the first thing I would do when I turned my computer on to make music was put 3 compressors and a limiter on the master. And then you just have fun with, you put a kick drum 20 dB too loud, just one, and it squashes everything. And that's a really exciting part of the music. You make the resonance much too hard on a synth or a bass part, and it's squashing everything else. And that's, you know, when you're at a live gig and the sound is too much, when the band go too crazy, that's part of the experience, because it's sort of squashed through the speakers, through your ears and your perception. To make these like too much moments, I thought was really important, and think is really important, I think.
And you mentioned Sasha. Like, how did you find, who is like, if any, some people here might not be familiar with him, like a big trance DJ.
He'd be really angry to be called trance. Progressive.
Oh, sorry, Sasha.
Yeah,
progressive.
But it's splitting hairs.
Accept my apologies, Sasha. So, how did you find yourself ending up there? And like, because I mean, if we want to go on pigeonholing, some people call what you're doing more shoegazing, techno, or whatever nowadays. You know?
I mean, that was at the point where I left the first record label, or I was about to leave, I can't remember, and was already sick of that pigeonhole of being in this English progressive scene, or whatever it was at the time, and like really didn't get on with, I mean, scenes, especially that scene, and trance, progressive, and even techno now to some extent, people get very fixed about this is what is progressive, this little box, and if you're going outside, then that's cheesy. And actually, really, it's cheesy to make this cliched box music. That's the cheesiest thing possible, and you can't have any sort of purism that someone who's outside your box is cheaper than you. That's a delusion, of you know, willful self-indulgence of it. And I don't know, I just did it because it seemed interesting. He phoned me up and said, do you want to come and write a track? But I saw that whole world of professional, big studio, making an album for a major label, and I haven't tried to get back into that world afterwards.
And you also moved around that world as a DJ, right? Then in the beginning, or
I was more at the bottom of the ladder then, so it was just, you know, and also I was quite unpopular with the fans of that genre because I was trying to play Boards of Canada tracks and then, you know, Pascal Fios tracks in the middle of a club where everybody was just playing trance with bongos or whatever.
And yeah, so after that, what did you do then? Like when you lost your interest in this kind of music and field, and
I mean, that's when we set up Border Community, just to do. I'd sort of worked out what I was interested in, my own thing, and I realised that. I mean, maybe we should go backwards a bit to the bad record label, if it's okay.
Feel free to.
What I was talking about this last night because I was terrified of coming here and just waffling on. I was scared I didn't have a huge amount to contribute, you know. But with my girlfriend, and we were talking, and what's really interesting about that time is all the lessons I learned from this bad record label, we took forward for Border Community to try and be the opposite of it. And if someone offers you a long contract, I'd really urge everyone, unless it's a major label and they're going to spend loads of money making you a big star, then I'd just say a long contract is the stupidest idea in the history of the music industry. Really, it's you tie yourself to someone, and then you both grow as, you know, a label or as a person or an artist, and there's no reason to expect you're going to go in the same direction, but you're tied to someone with an expectation who wants you to do a certain thing and is trying to tell you how to write music. You're never going to make good music in that pressured environment. I think it's like the worst thing for an artist. So I'd had this experience, and then we bought a community. We tried to make it so that we just sign a record. We don't ever make a commitment for the future or take a commitment from the artist for the future. We just tell them, you know, if you like us still, if we're interested in what you're doing, we'll keep working with you. And that's it. And then they don't feel like they have to deliver the follow-up to whatever they did. They don't feel like they're tied to us. They can go and make completely different music. And I think it gets much better results because they're not sort of stressing, trying to make something. I mean, going into the studio to try and make something, if you've ever gone in and think, oh, today I'm going to make a hit, that's the day you make the worst record you made for a month or something. So it's to try and take that away, and also to try and, I mean, A&R men will definitely, a million times in your careers, try and tell you what to do, try and change how you're making a record, try and give you a bit of advice. And actually, if someone wants to change your music, I think that's probably the wrong person to be putting out your music. I mean, it seems obvious, maybe, to me. There was one, I'm not going to name him, but there was one A&R man who told Nathan Fake to turn his kick drum up 3 dB. Just right, that was his feedback on the track. And Nathan told him to fuck off, obviously.
But that's quite a specific feedback, right?
Yeah. It was completely wrong. I mean, the kick drum was maybe a bit loud in the record. But
And Nathan Fake is one of the artists.
yeah, and he's
on your label.
He's, I guess, our most successful of our artists. But
Before we listen to something of his that you remixed, maybe, you really never told any artists on your label to change something, or like, I mean, there's also this thing, I believe, even in English, it is called constructive criticism.
I think it's more like we pick from what they do the bits we like, and they might get an idea of which end of their music we're interested in, and go, and that might have some influence on them. But we definitely try never to say, you know, make this more. I mean, the A&R man that told Nathan that, as I've seen other feedback from him, and he said things like, oh, could you make the breakdown more like this other record? And what a terrible way to make music, trying to make music that's like another record. I mean, what's the point of doing that? I quite firmly believe that if your record's like another record, don't put it out. But I might be in the minority.
So you maybe have something with a kick drum that's minus 3 dB.
You really want me to play this, guys?
Yeah, because some people might not know it. Or
so either you know this or you don't. But for me, it's like the albatross, the millstone around my neck. You make a hit, and then dilettantes will be asking you for it for the rest of your life in your DJ sets, even though you're completely sick of it, and everyone else is. So this is. I thought I'd just play the original as well. Just to show that I didn't really do anything in the remix. This is Nathan's original, which he just did in one live take. He's mentally just makes something, does a live take, and so you get the idea. Anyway, I had something to say about that, but I've forgotten.
you forgot?
Yeah, it's gone.
Maybe that it's for different purposes, right? Because you said that you like the original
Yeah,
more
I mean,
than your take on it.
For me, yeah, I definitely like the original more. It's just right, a moment. And then I'd been playing it in clubs, but we wanted to put it out. And I thought, oh, maybe I can make a remix that other people will play. And maybe I can find this fine line between these things. And at the time, it really felt like I was quite pleased. I sort of found a line where I turned Nathan's shoegazing whatever record into a club track, and it didn't seem too corny, whatever. And now listening to it, I mean, it depends if you have followed the techno scene for the last few years, but for me it feels so corny because of all the copies I've heard. I mean, there are some artists have made more than one cover of this track, not acknowledging that it's a
Yeah,
cover.
what happened
but
with the remix? So for
Yeah.
anyone not following the techno scene, I believe there are a few here who don't follow the techno
Yeah,
scene.
lucky you. But, and then, yeah, to hear these horrible, I mean, for me, the point of the remix was that it stayed back a bit. There wasn't a snare roll or a, you know, it didn't quite deliver in the breakdown. It didn't quite drop right back in. It took a while. It was a bit awkward sounding. And that's the thing that keeps it back from being just a, you know, a trance record or whatever, like cheap. And then the people would, I mean, one guy took the digga-digga drums thing, took the synth part, just changed one chord, took the bass line, one note different, tried to do a melody over the top, but just pumped the whole thing up like a, you know, a big room festival trance banger. And it just made me
Like
so...
bodybuilding.
Yeah, exactly. And it just made me really sick, and I actually really hate, because of that, I sort of hate hearing the remix. It's really, maybe that's entirely self-indulgent.
But you seem to have a tendency to, when you go back to your previous work, to kind of feel not that positive about it, or is it just in certain...
I think that one is the worst because of the context it's been put in by other people. You know, after your record comes out, it has a life of its own, and you don't really have any control over it, and things can really go. You can't ever put them back in the box. Yeah, and some of my old stuff. There's one. Hang on, I'm just going to play 10 seconds of it, but this is my second release. I still play it in my sets occasionally. It's like a deep house sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, that was when I was the same age as that first trance record, more or less. And I feel happy with that. You can go back to things. It's just, I don't know, some of your little naive moments maybe should be kept in private if you feel like that when you're old.
And what did that Nathan Fake record mean for your label then?
It does make for an independent label that's trying to make people, as a label, it's a bit like being a DJ, sort of. You're trying to make people trust you to buy the next unknown artist, to sort of believe in what your identity and where you're going, and to have a hit like that, it did make it a lot easier. Definitely, yeah, to have people follow you and pay attention and actually buy an unknown artist's next record or whatever. But then afterwards, people start to think, oh, that's the sound of the label, and you're only going to do that for the rest of your life. And if a record that you put out isn't as delivering as much as that, then it's just not so good. And you have to then have this second fight to sort of tell those people they've got the wrong idea and they should, you know, go and find someone else to listen to.
So how do you decide what you're going to put out and what not?
That's
out of all the MySpace messages you get with the nice links.
I think I've never listened to a MySpace link. Just if we agree, like, because I run it with my partner, Gemma, and yeah, sometimes one of us will like something, and it's usually just if both of us feel like we can live with this record for the rest of our lives, then we'll put it out, and if not, then we don't. And it's quite easy.
Yeah, because you make the decision in one moment, right? And you talked about naivety and
yeah.
So
yeah, I don't have any problem with putting out naive records or things that are outside the box or a bit cheesy or something. But it's just this sort of feeling you have when you listen to something. If we both have it, then I just know it's a good thing, and it's always worked, I think.
And going back to your work as a remixer, obviously that Nathan Fake thing was a quite successful remix for you. And so how do you work with like all the offers you get to make an endless stream of follow-ups?
Well, yeah, now I just tell people I'm not doing remixes. I'm just bored of it. It's not as... It's when I was young and I'd put out a record and it was a bit of a corny hit, and then you do get a stream of people who want remixes off you, and it is the easy option. You haven't got any money, and someone offers you 500 quid to churn out something.
Or even more.
Yeah. It went up, and then the music industry died, and it went back down again. And also, I mean, yeah, it's like, but it distracts you from making your own music, and you're sort of putting your ideas into remixes. And I always had the thought that I didn't really want to put out things I wasn't happy with, so I was really putting a lot of my effort into the remixes. And it's, looking back, it's the reason it took me so long to make anything of my own again, and to make a proper album and all these things. Just a remix has a deadline as well, and you're sort of, you get this job, you do it with a deadline, and then making your own music is a completely other thing, because there's no deadline, there's no one saying they need it 2 weeks ago, and it just gets pushed to the back gradually further and further. And I've realized now that I've just let it go right to the back of, and I have to be a bit selfish and push my own thing to the front again.
And when was the last time you did a record of your own that was released, like an album?
It was the Idiots Are Winning, but I can't remember when it came out. 2007, 8?
2006.
No,
Mistake.
I've wasted 4 years of my life.
And why are the Idiots winning?
I was a line from this Chris Morris TV series, Nathan Barley. It was about a journalist who decided, it was like a self-effacing title. It was the character in this sitcom who's a journalist at something like Vice magazine, who thinks he's above it all, and he calls everyone, all the trendies, they're idiots, but he's the biggest idiot. He's a complete fool. I sort of thought, I go around being quite negative about techno in general, but really I'm the biggest idiot, so I thought that was quite a... But then, once it's out in the world, people take their own meaning, and people go, I'm an idiot. Like, I find that...
And there's even a track on it called Idiot. Right?
Yeah.
So maybe because it's to me it's a bit like different again from your other stuff, the way it sounds, the way it works. So
that track, or
yeah.
Okay,
So
completely.
maybe. It's like video game music.
Yeah, or I might go to the Lewin whenever I play one of mine. It's much less uncomfortable to watch you looking uncomfortable on the sofa on the screen there.
Yeah, that's your trick, right? Because you don't want to listen to your own music, you just pretend going to the loo.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
okay.
You're going to think I have a bladder problem by the end of the day.
I sometimes have a bladder problem, but we shouldn't talk about our bladders here. It might be a bit self-indulgent.
Well, the bladder is a very important part of being a DJ, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, you have to hold it in for hours. It's really...
So how do you work it out? Drinking, DJing, bladdering?
I reach a point where I'm just sipping a bottle of water 4 hours into a set.
And but that leads us into your DJ persona, right? So you mentioned earlier, like making a record or a record label, you try to convince people.
Yeah.
So that's what you do as a DJ?
To some extent, yeah. And try and have fun as well, myself. It's quite embarrassing to stand on a stage in front of a load of people, and it's even more embarrassing if you're not 100% behind the record you play. So, yeah, I guess I just, more and more, initially I didn't realize that you couldn't get away with just playing all your favorite records one after the other. And it took me a while to learn that, and not to just throw Boards of Canada in and make everyone leave the dance floor. But gradually I realized you can, through technical stuff, you can make people not realize that you're playing the wrong music for the time.
And what is the technical stuff?
For me as a DJ, like the key mixing thing is the most important thing, because so much of dance music is when you're in a club, you're half the night you're listening to intros and outros that have no interesting information in them. They're just a beat, and they're just there because the DJ can't key mix and he wants to do a smooth mix between 2 tracks. I'd really rather personally not hear those bits and just hear someone throwing the fader up and putting two things out of time and, you know, crossfading in 5 seconds. Because listening to 2 minutes of a less good drum beat than the rest of the track is depressing, isn't it? So with key mixing, you can really just see the musical links between things. And if you're holding the arpeggio that's the end of one track and then playing an ambient track over the top of it and then something else that's in the same key, it all just feels like you can change mood very drastically and go from banging to not banging. But because they're musically linked, it just feels like it's a continuation of the same thing. And that lets you, I mean, the more you go into that, it lets you play sets where you're playing like krautrock and techno and everything together, and they feel like it's just one kind of music on a good night when it works.
But to do that, you need to be able to say what key it is in you want to play, right? Which is something that is quite hard for most DJs, I guess, because they're not musicians.
Yeah.
So send them all to music school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, DJing is so easy, really. Beat matching. Yeah, well, it always does it wrong, though. I saw in my friend's record bag, he's using mixed in key or whatever it's called, and he had some of my tracks, and I was looking at the codes, and then his wheel, whatever this crazy wheel system is, and trying to work out what key it is in real music, and that's completely wrong. It's not understood. And I mean, I'm really lucky because I have Nathan Fake on the other end of my instant messenger, and whenever there's a track I can't work out, I send it to him and he tells me the answer in 10 seconds. But I mean, it's not too hard to learn to key things. You know what a major and a minor chord is. You have a Casio keyboard and you play around until you find the one that sounds right and make a note of it. And then, I mean, it's just the massive effort of keying your whole record collection. That's why maybe you want software to do it.
Yeah, and DJs are lazy, right?
Yeah, but
they don't even want to carry records around anymore.
And it's compared to what, you know, if you're producing, that's such a huge skill. You can learn it for your whole life. DJing, you can learn it for your whole life, and the subtle things of how to work a crowd and everything. But the technical part, anyone who thinks that beat matching is an achievement really needs to get out more and try a bit harder or something.
But, I mean, you get out almost every other weekend, right?
Yeah, I try and spend a bit of time at home just to be normal. But yeah.
Like, because, you know, usually DJing is turned into this great thing. You get flown in, you get a free dinner, this great party, everyone wants to kiss you. But is it really like that? You don't look like a guy who's enjoying the Ibiza image of it all.
I mean, I like to have fun sometimes, but yeah, like a lot of the things that go with it are they get old very, very quickly. And flying and restaurants and hotels. When I go on holiday now, I go on holiday in England because I can go in my car and not go in an airport and everything. But also it's sort of like poison for your soul. I mean, I've seen a lot of people affected by it. And that's when I was talking with my girlfriend last night. It's like another thing that she thought I should talk about is that if you have flaws in your personality and then a bit of success, then you'll pretty quickly find a way to destroy your own success and just end it. And I've seen it so many times with people, they get sucked into the drugs or the girls or
both.
Or both, yeah. And why would you want to have sex with someone who isn't really interested in you, but your brand and your image and your persona? That's the craziest thing. I can't imagine ever doing that. But yeah, and if that's why, if you let yourself into that world, I think it's a really slippery downward slope to a sad existence.
So border community makes you attractive for all the girls in the world?
Well, I don't think. Not all of them, but there's a few nutters out there, and I don't think if I hadn't have made records and had a record label and played records, then they wouldn't be coming up to me in a club being a bit weird, and I'm quite aware of that. And I remember being in a club and girls not coming up to me, so yeah, it's good to keep a hold of. That's what I really am. I'm not the most popular guy in the world, and or the room or whatever, and that's that's nice. It's fine to not be popular.
But the DJ thing is what pays the bill nowadays, right? With record sales going down and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, if you work hard with a record label, it can do more than break even. But really, DJing is so much more, and live for the artists on the label as well. They get the record is some money, but 1 gig, 2 gigs, 3 gigs makes as much money as the whole record is going to make.
So it's the proverbial business card.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's still everything is changing, and I don't really know where it's going to end up. And I find it quite interesting to read people speculating what the future's going to be like for the music industry, but really we don't know, and it's quite. I don't know if giving music away for free is the future or not, but I don't like the idea of it. I mean, one of our artists told me he only wants to do releases if he can have vinyl, which is sort of, lots of them feel a bit like that, but he's very purist about it. And I sort of feel the same. If you haven't made a thing, if you haven't sort of had a transaction, sold something, then it's not quite as... But maybe I'm just an old man now, and I'm talking about the good old days that have gone when I was a boy.
Someone said the other day, he has a record company, so he plays records as well, and you don't, right?
Yeah, I buy records, but records don't have loop buttons or master tempo or reverse, so I record the records to CD and then play them. But I understand it gives the message that's...
And you also add a sampler to it, right? When you play?
Yeah, just this cheap little Cycloops thing. Mine's because I've been planning to switch to Tractor for like 3 years. I didn't buy a new one, even though bits keep falling off it. So now it's like an electric shock risk, and one of the buttons doesn't work, and you have to sort of jiggle the cable to make it work at the start. But I'm still not buying another one because I am going to get round to loading Tractor and learning it.
But it's all part of the performance then, right?
Yeah, it's quite... I mean, sometimes the dead duff connection has made a really interesting noise in the middle of a set, and if you get thrown something that you weren't expected, sometimes, as long as you're not having a bad day, then you can really take that and go somewhere else with it, like play with it. A bit of distortion that you didn't expect is really nice to, just... I did mean to do that and make something of it.
And when you're 64, you will be still mixing records in key then?
I don't know if... I think the older you get, the more embarrassing it would get to be playing to people half your age or a third of your age. So I don't think I'd want to be doing it when I'm really old, no.
So what's the exit? If you can't sustain with making records?
I don't know. Maybe I'll make a really good album one day and go in that direction. I'm sort of interested in producing people. I mean, who here is thinking about what they're going to do when they're 40? Come on, good on.
Oh, you need a microphone then, and tell us.
Well, that's really good. I mean, do think about it. I don't know if there's an answer. Maybe it brings you a midlife crisis early or something. But like,
have you seen a documentary about a heavy metal band called Anvil?
Yes, that's such a good film. Everyone should watch that. It's really beautiful, isn't it? The happy end of it. It's like...
Yeah, I was glad that it had an happy end. But it kind of goes to show like how seductive this whole thing is, Those guys went on to make a super influential heavy metal album called Metal on Metal, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. And we're playing stages in Japan with like electric guitars and dildos.
Yeah, really Spinal Tap, but not a joke.
Yeah, not a joke. And then they thought like, okay, here we go. This is the career. And it all faded. And now they're like in their 50s, right?
Yeah, but
and
they kept going.
Kept going and still try to make that one album that will be the final great success, and they play all over the world again.
Yeah, it's really nice, isn't it? Like that.
But you don't want to really be a one-person Anvil, right?
No, and there's maybe a bit of that about me. but like, I don't know, when you're an old person, you have a different... if you have kids or something, your life's going to change. And I don't really think, I feel like I could stop and I'd feel like I'd done something that was enough and I could go and just do something different with my life and it wouldn't be gutted about it at all now. So, I mean, that's probably quite a good position to be in. If you're desperate to be, you know, DJing so that you can get free cocaine and girls every weekend for the rest of your life, then probably that's not going to work out. But if you can just be relaxed and identify the time where it's right to step back and do something completely different, then you can have a dignified death or whatever.
But you obviously, I mean, you're also doing your own parties, right? Your border community nights. So that is like the right setting for you, where you actually... Because, I mean, that's the nature of it, that you quite often end up in places and spaces where you feel it's not right to be here now, right? Or
yeah, completely. And this weekend was a really good case in point, because we had our London BC night at Corsica Studios, which is a perfect, grimy little venue, amazing sound, and like a really nice crowd of fellow slightly hippie people coming along. And you can play anything, and we have like a band at the start, and then, you know, all kinds of, the guy from Fuck Buttons was DJing, Andrew, and, you know, playing amazing stuff, but completely outside the box, and you're completely free. And then the next day I was at a mega rave in Spain, where before me was Radio Slave, who I like, but it's completely sort of unrelated musically, to try and make the transition. And then after Steve Bug, who, you know, probably wasn't too happy about following me either. So it's like, yeah, like the home thing it's lovely having your own thing. I mean, that's sort of with border community, 90% of the power of it is that you have 10 friends who agree with you and who are like, when you do something, they're like, yeah, I understand what you were trying to do there. That sort of works and you're getting there. And having just this little gang around you, you feel a bit more confident when someone's holding up a mobile phone with, "This is shit, please play Sky Was Pink." You feel a bit more confident if Luke Abbott's behind you dancing away, or Nathan's in the crowd. And it's like it stops you being influenced by, why would I care what that person thinks? They obviously see music different from me. So I should block out their influence completely and just listen to the people who I agree with. And I think maybe that's the most important thing that I've learned in the whole time, that lots of people are going to tell you their opinion, but really it's just finding some people on your wavelength. And if they like the same music as you and they like your music, then probably, as long as they're not just being polite, probably you're on the right track. And if an A&R man doesn't like your music, don't work with him.
So you have to have a community on the border of things.
Yeah, I mean, at the start, before I had the label, I had my mates at college, and it was the same thing. Like, if you have your group of friends around you, your sort of little collective, you all feed off each other, and you all help each other to grow, and that's, like, holding on to that thing, I think is really important, definitely.
And you mentioned the word hippie, and earlier on krautrock, so, and I once heard you saying that this kind of changed the whole way you approached music as an influence on.
Yeah.
And we had Cluster here the other day.
I wish I could have come down for that.
Yeah, you can watch it on the website.
Yeah.
You should check blah 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 blah.
Was it good? Was it?
I will check it on the website, but I hope these guys enjoyed it. So, but maybe you can talk a little bit about what kind of made you rethinking your own music by listening to these records.
I'd quite like to play something first.
Yeah, you
and
can.
And then, I'm going to play, it's by Cluster, it's a track called Hollywood, and the date on it is, give me a sec, oh no, it isn't in there. I think it's 1973, something like that. And to me, when I heard this, I suddenly realized that dance music wasn't, you know, this history of dance music with Detroit and Chicago and everything, and Kraftwerk. Actually, it goes back a bit further. And this record from 73, they've invented trance. They've made it better than trance. They've finished, that's it. The whole thing was unnecessary from that point on. I think that's perfect. I actually think that's the perfect record. I just love it. What is it? Cluster. Oh, right. Yeah.
Did they play it the other day? You just can't remember, right? You weren't paying attention. And that's what you try to achieve now, being, instead of the one-man anvil, you're the one-man cluster.
They've had an interesting career, but I just want to be the one-man me, really. But I had something... Always when I play a record, I think of loads of things to say, and then just gone when I press stop.
Yeah, but it also... We talked about it a little bit earlier, that it made you rethink the way you actually produce music, not in a way of what kind of music, but also with the tools you're using, right?
Yeah, it made me really... it made me really interested in how the equipment is affecting the results and the method you use and the process you go through. And really, I had been a disciple, really into making music with just a computer. When I started, I had no money. It was just only free software. I didn't even know about cracked software then, so it was just freeware. And I was quite an evangelist for it. And at the time, because it was the 90s, people were still using proper equipment, and they were saying, oh, it sounds really thin from a computer. So I was quite defensive of computer music and sort of really into it and just stuck with it for a long time, didn't buy any equipment. And then you realize that the computer, although it can do everything, that's also a problem, because you're sitting there in the studio and you have too many things to play with, too many possible options, and then your music has no character because you're just playing with the same massive set of possibilities that everybody is, and not really focusing yourself into a direction. And so buying loads of analog synths has completely changed what I do. It's just, I feel like it's a process that I'm interested in, and I'll do that for a while, and then the results are quite focused because I'm so limited by it, that you're working around limitations. I mean, I think maybe my stuff I made on my 8-bit Amstrad was better than some of the stuff I'd have done since, because I was working within these, I've got 3 notes and some white noise. It's you're working within the limits, and you make something that pushes at them. Whereas, so much dance music you hear, and it just sounds like, oh, you've got too many plugins, that's your problem. You hear, swooshy, lovely production, but no character or soul, because it's gone because of that. It's like...
So the saying, a bad worker blames his tools, is not right, or is it? In that case,
I'm a bad worker blaming other people's tools. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the electronic music has evolved since computers caught on, and you hear it in the sound, the massive overcompression that's really trendy at the moment, or whatever. And if you sort of go along with it, just follow what everyone else is putting Ultra Maximizer on their master, so I will too, then that's one less difference between you and everyone else, and it's one less... I don't think you have to compete in the loudness war or whatever it is.
So the loudness war in 2 sentences for people who haven't heard about the loudness war.
Everyone's heard about the loudness.
Everyone? Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of trying to make your song sound better by limiting them too much is...
And one of the pieces of equipment you kind of bought in the last years that's influential for you is like a modular system, right?
Yeah.
And your co-workers are still packing it up to get it here in time, right? For you guys to check it out.
No. I mean, modular is a bit like taking up crack as a hobby. It's quite addictive. You've got this big case with loads of spacers in it. I thought, maybe I just want one more oscillator. It's really good as well, because once you've got the rack in the house, the modules can come, and Gemma doesn't notice that a module arrives in the post, so I'll just get another filter and choose it for a day when she's not going to be around in the morning, and then I can get it screwed in before she's even...
So can you explain it real quick for someone who has never seen or heard of a modular system, what it is?
It's a big rack with individual modules that are the component parts of analog synthesis, and then you just patch it together with cables, sort of 3.5 mil jacks. And so, for example, you've got a load of oscillators and filters, but because you can patch them incorrectly, and because you have modules that do things that no synth really has in it, you're making a synth out of a delay and some noise and some feedback to make a tone, or that's what I was doing last week, or making fake drums, 2 filters in a feedback circle, and the resonance, if you just send it a little click, then the resonance of the filters makes it make a noise which sounds incredibly like a drum, but it's really expressive, so you can go crazy. You can just spend the whole night putting cables in and just see what happens when you turn it on in the morning. It's quite unpredictable, and it reacts to itself. What I really like, basically what I'm interested in at the moment in making music, is making an instrument, not like a computer that's predictable and controllable, and you draw a curve with the mouse and next time you press play it's the same as it will be when you render it. With the modular, you're making a thing that's connected to itself and it's chaotic, it's out of control. And so you push the filter on a bass line and you've got it wired into something else and the drums go a bit wrong. And that's a moment, and then you react to that and do something else. And it's like when I used to play the violin, it would always make the wrong sound when I was trying to make music. But in the end, you learn to go with that. And I've made a squeak, I'll make the most of it. And the same with, that's sort of the best bits of my recent recordings have been accidents that it's made by itself. It's like, I quite like the idea of making music that's not as good as it possibly could be, not as polished, not as in people's faces, not as perfect or hooky. And they have to sort of see through the layer of fuzz and mistakes and slight awkwardness of the arrangement to get to the beauty of it. And then, I don't know, maybe I'm just an old man, but that doesn't seem as cheap as trying to make a pop record straight away in your face.
And you can't go back and recreate the exact same sound with it?
No, never.
Not even if you write down what you did?
I don't have time to write down where all the cables went. I tried to take a photo of it once, and then sort of halfway through I just gave up trying to put the cables back in. It's too confusing. Usually when I go back in the morning, I don't remember what I was trying to achieve, and I just turn it on and see if it still works. And usually it doesn't. You have to wait for the room to get hot, and then all the oscillators go back into tune. And yeah.
So it's alive.
Yeah. With the krautrock stuff, for example, Connie Plank was the guy that produced a lot of cluster, harmonia, stuff like that. And there's some really good interviews with him on the internet where he's talking about their production methods. And he was around at the point where sequencers were invented. And so I like the idea of being able to do this, but this metronomic thing, he didn't like it. So the sequencers in this are triggered from the drummer in the band, and the drummer would play a rhythm on electronic drums, but those triggers would feed the sequencer. So the whole thing is natural and moving around itself, and the timing is varying. The BPM goes up and down 3 or 4 BPM through that track. And
so no quantizing?
Yeah. I never use quantize now. The best... It's I think it's coming round again. We've had this trend of music getting more and more perfect because of computers, but then people like Flying Lotus, who's in this afternoon, his timing is amazing because it's loose. It's the natural placement of the beats. You can't do that with a mouse, I don't think, or you can do it with a mouse if you're gifted, but it's a sort of... Rhythm is like innate and completely unexplainable. What's the difference between good funk and good swing and someone who's a bad drummer? You can't really draw a graph of, this is the good swing pattern and that's the bad one. It's more complicated than even melody and harmony. And I think to leave it to Logic's 16T swing or whatever it's called, it's crazy.
Yeah. Maybe is. And should we open it up for you guys to ask a few questions? And the microphone is coming. There was...
Okay. Hi. I was wondering, it's like, my name's Juan, sorry, but like... I know I'm asking you to repeat everything, but is there I'm challenged by, because I do. My favorite stuff is like what I do, and it looks very naive. But then all of a sudden, I come in. Oh, it's not loud enough, and it's not gonna sound good enough. Professional stereo. Is there like a specific advice you would give to balance those two, like the naiveness and the?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's really hard to make something that competes with straight, properly mixed, pumped up music without losing all the feeling of it, the soul. I mean, my technique was just to let it distort a bit, to push it a bit on Ultra Maximizer, but not make it well mixed and punchy. I don't know, what kind of music are you doing?
I don't know.
That's
I call it pop, but people saw me horribly when I said that.
that's the best answer, definitely. If you can't describe it, you're one step ahead. If someone says, "Oh, I make house," okay, bye. Like, I think eventually I just found a way. I found a way where my sound that I could be happy with was also working with people, and it did take a long time to evolve. And also the reason sort of I haven't done anything since 2006 is I had 2 years where just nothing was right, and I was trying to get away from all the old tricks I had and learn some new ones. And it does take a really long time, and I'm lucky because I get to try things out in clubs, and without that it would be harder. And it is just sort of almost the hardest thing in making your own music is finding your own aesthetic that works, your own thing, which is why I think the copyists are so cheap. They've missed out the most important stage of making music. And if you're committed to doing that for yourself, I think it does pay off, because you end up completely unique, and people that hear your music are going to realize that and identify the character that's in it. So I guess it's just lots of hard work. Sorry, I haven't got a better answer.
No, thank you. Okay, thanks.
And you had a question as well, right?
Hello. I just very recently started a label, I guess, and I was wondering if there's some kind of advice, something that you can tell me, because I'm completely clueless. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing.
If it's any comfort, we were at the start as well. We were completely. What kind of music are you doing? Like
house. I'm with you now. Actually, the first release was dub.
Okay, cool.
And the second was gospel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good label. I think the things that first you've got to realize it is a business, and business is quite different from music. And you do, for a record label, the difference between making money and losing money is sometimes just bothering to chase up all the little tiny bits that people owe you, joining all the societies and that pay you not mechanical, performing royalties and all this stuff, and the really tedious stuff. And doing that is quite a big part of it, and you have to detach yourself, do that, and then go back to being a musician. But also, for us, it was finding the people that in the world that felt similarly. Like when we started, I was only really known in this English scene, which didn't really like me. But I'd been going out and buying compact records and just realised, these people are sort of thinking along the same lines. So if I can reach out and make them realise that we're, kindred spirits, hopefully, then that's going to help. We're going to feed off each other. I'm going to meet their fans, and it's going to connect. And if you can find that with your music, just the specific people who are completely on your wavelength, then they're the ones that are really going to support you and help you get somewhere. I guess, it is hard, so good luck.
Okay, so running a label has a lot to do with people.
Yeah. And obviously have the worst social skills ever, so it is possible to do it if you're not charming.
That was just one more question. You actually prefer to use CDs instead of records?
Yeah, but it's because of this key matching thing, and because I play a lot of music that doesn't have intros and outros and stuff.
How do you do the key matching?
Well, because I sort my CDs by key, and with vinyl it sort of gets really complicated to try and keep. You have to have lots more music with you because you're more limited in your choices because of the key matching. So I have huge numbers of CDs, and if it was vinyl, I'd have to have 5 or 6 cases to do that.
But when you change the pitch on a CD, you know, it also changes.
It changes the key, yeah. So I know that 6% is one semitone, or 6 point something percent. So I remember that, and I have in my CD wallet, I have a little table of if it's 115 BPM, and you go up 4 keys, then it's. I've got a maths degree and I can't do that. But also the master tempo you can do, although it's a bit crappy sounding, you can use the master tempo and slow the track down, and you've moved because then you've moved to a different key by doing that, and sort of jump through. But yeah, you're a vinyl lover then, are you?
Yeah, I like vinyl, but I also use tractors.
Yeah, I mean Tractor has a much better pitch shift in it, which is why I want to use
Tractor, it has the key lock.
Yeah,
or
and you can actually change it to a different.
So you can change the tempo without changing pitch.
And you can move it up 2 semitones, and it still sounds all right. Yeah, so that's the magic.
Okay, thank you.
So that's why you don't have time for all the vices of the DJ life, because you're too busy.
Yeah, doing
with
maths.
maths and
adding 7 to numbers is really.
Any other questions? There's one in the front here. This one. Oh, sorry.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I was just checking. Seeing as you say you don't like a lot of kind of dancey music, you know, like all the crap kind of bandwagon jumping stuff, is there any that you actually do listen to in the house at all?
Dance music?
Yeah. Anything that's actually good?
Yeah, there are. I mean, especially not the 4/4
remember seeing you talking about, because Phil Kieran has his wee thing on his page, so I saw that you would listen to that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that album is actually quite dancey, but I quite like it in the car. It's quite. I mean, the car is better for dance.
That's not your house, though.
Yeah, the house. Well, we have it in the house because it's so hard to deal with all this music that's this perpetual stream of there's too much to listen to, and you feel like you want to catch up on classic things you haven't heard. And so I just put it all in the server and then listen on random play. And there is maybe like 5% of dance music that I won't run around, find the remote and skip it when it comes on. Like DJ Kotzer, for example, his music's so warm and human and interesting and surprising that I can listen to that all day and not get bored. But like a DJ mix recorded from a mixer in a club, it just doesn't seem right to listen to in the house.
Okay, that was just a curious question. Nothing really deep and meaningful like a lot of them, you know. So, who wants?
Hey, I was wanting to maybe get a little more into what you're talking about with people being on the same wavelength as you, and it's something I was thinking about in what you were saying before. How you have you and your group of friends, and you have the music that you make, and your circle or whatever are into it, and that's cool, and you can get a vibe, and that's great. And then perhaps you go and perform a DJ set or whatever, and some guy's like, I want you to play this tune. I'm not into that. And well, it's like, okay, well, whatever. This is me. It's not you. So you can, fuck yourself or whatever. Not saying that that's how you are, but it's like. So how do you make a balance, sort of a balance between what you want and what people want?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like a fine line, isn't it? I imagine if I was in the crowd at the club, what would I like to hear? And that's really who you're playing for. Like, you just want to play, if you play music that you really believe in and you're not crazy, then there's some other people in the world who see music the same way. And you're just playing for them, and you don't have to think about anyone else. Like, trying to please people, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be, in a way it seems this like the question people always ask DJs, are you an entertainer or an educator? And like both options seem kind of patronizing and a bit of an insult to the... If you're trying to please the crowd, implicit in that is sort of a bit of disrespect for them if you think they're stupid and you have to play stupid music to them or cheap music to them. So I sort of think it is a bit arsehole-ish to be fuck you to people who ask for things. And I am aware that I am a bit of one of them. But at the same time, I think it's the least bad option. You're not being as rude to them as if you patronize them by playing something that you didn't 100% believe in. But in a way, I'm lucky because what I like is essentially a little bit populist. So I can get away with being as self-indulgent as I want.
Cool.
So what's the international hand gesture for play more stupid music, please?
Actually, I've seen it like a million times. It'll be a guy, maybe with his shirt off, sweating a bit. And he'll come up and go...
That's it? And
yeah, and the louder hands. And I don't know, now I mean, it can be incredibly hard to face up to criticism right in your face. I mean, some people are equipped to deal with it. I don't think I was when I was younger. Now I just sort of smile and, you know, if someone's negative, can you play some different music? Well, you obviously like different music to me. You should go to a different club. Sorry. And I can do that and not really go away feeling bad. But at the start, I mean, I remember like lying in hotel rooms awake after gigs, super depressed. Like it's the lowest you can be, this like bad gig feeling after a thing. And like learning to deal with that without it affecting what you do is really important, I think. It's like negative feedback. You have to be able to say, well, some of this negative feedback is just irrelevant. You can also take from it, like maybe if I work harder, these people won't realize they don't like this music, or these people will get this thing or whatever. And maybe I can find a way to work this in. I mean, my first DJ sets where I was clearing dance floors with Boards of Canada, I did have to learn something from that. And now, because I can key mix it and, you know, put a beat under it halfway through, I get away with it. And it's sort of, that's as much of a compromise as you need to make, I think. Like, just finding a way to sell it without changing what you're selling. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
any more questions? No one. So, but you, yeah, it's slowly fading away. We will be depressed after this, lying awake in our rooms. And you said you didn't make any music since 2006. That's not true.
Well, some remixes.
Yeah.
And,
For instance, a remix for a band called Radiohead, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you do there?
That was
Using the modular system?
Yeah, it was funny because they asked me to do a remix and told me who else was doing it. And I was like, oh, what are your plans? Oh, we're going to do a 12-inch. And then I did it, and then they changed their mind and had this remix competition thing on their website and just posted all the remixes they'd paid for as if they were competition entries. It's like a really weird, felt a bit uncomfortable that it looked like I'd entered a competition, which it's a bit, maybe it's arrogant to be embarrassed at that, but yeah. Other than that, I mean, the remix, I know you've got it in the CD player, so I don't have to use Windows desktop search again.
But yeah, how did you end up in the competition? What place?
Like 1020 or something, I don't know. I haven't asked everyone on my MySpace to vote, so I mean, it's meaningless, isn't it? I was talking about it this last week with another artist, like, the wisdom of crowds is a really dubious thing, like the most popular thing. It's this thing of whether an opinion is relevant to you. If someone, and a big weakness of the internet, that you see lots of opinions, but you read them on the internet in your own voice. You sort of go on a forum and you read what someone says, and you don't realize that if you met that person, you'd think their clothes were shit, all their other music is shit, and everything else they believe in is shit. But you read their opinion disconnected from that, and it has more. Really, the only opinions that matter are the close ones. So the vote in this thing, I'm happy that I can completely ignore it.
So, shall we listen?
Yeah, this is entirely the modular, and I made because the modular's, old-fashioned, it doesn't have polyphony or anything. I made a max patch, which you send it MIDI, which is polyphonic or not, and it just takes it in turns to send it to a different MIDI out. So it was a different oscillator and a different filter for the polyphony. I think it's only 2-note polyphony in the riff that you hear in it. And then it's just something the modular like opened up. Like I didn't really think about it, but then I ended up realizing that this pattern, which is like 6 notes long, divided in 2 different voices, and you could split it into 2 patterns by changing the sound of just one voice. And it's really like an accident. I just arrived at that, and then that's the thing.
So here we go.
It's on. Like, your name was Wan. Yeah, right. I'm glad I got it right. It would be awful. This maybe answers your question a bit, because for me, the bad mix of this is like really important for the identity of it. Like, it wouldn't be the same if it was mixed properly. You couldn't get away with it, in my head, at least. The kick's rubbish. The bass doesn't come in properly at the end of the drops. All these, everything's in 6/8 time, apart from a hi-hat in that speaker, which is in 16ths. It's all out of time. It sounds like water's been poured in some of the equipment, or the vocals mixed wrong. I really butchered Tom York's voice. All these things were like necessary for me. I felt like I didn't want to make anything any easier than that. But because it's quite loud and it's intense, and I think I got the arrangement about right, you can get away with it. And that's about all there is to it. Just like making it have that thing where it works for at least some of the people, and having the confidence to just do it and throw it out there is almost all you need to get away with doing your own little messy thing, I think. I hope that helps a bit more than my first answer.
And unlike the other idiots, it makes you take your shirt off, right? Okay, if we don't have any other questions, please give Mr. Holden a nice goodbye. Yeah. Thanks for having me.